Computer. All right, recording in progress. Okay. Hey, good afternoon. Today is April 2nd, day after April's Fool's Day. And John Kreutzer, we got Brandon Arvin here for the most recent episode of Smoking Lamp Scholars. It's been a while, I know. And as you can see, if you're watching this, I've got this cool RoboCop bionic arm on. So like last time we spoke, there was an awesome picture of me in the ER wearing a Cobra Kai t-shirt and American flag silkies. Is that still your Facebook profile picture, Brandon?
I think I made it temporary. It went back to like some picture of me and Ashley now.
All right. Well, so I do want to give a big shout out to Navy Medicine. I'm going to pay this forward to them. So I got to say, from tearing my bicep on the 1st of March, I walked out of the ER or was wheeled out of the ER. They won't let you walk around on all those meds. Less than 2 weeks later, right? And even though I won't show people because some people are grossed out, but it does look like I got cut with a broken beer bottle. It's recovering well, but at the same time, shout out for getting the job done. And I appreciate that. I walked into occupational therapy on Monday, and the Navy lieutenant, physical therapist, she has a master's degree on her wall. She looks at me like I just farted, like real bad too. This look of disgust and disbelief. And she asked me, she says, "Where is your brace? And why are you not wearing it?" I didn't have this brace. And I was like, "That's a good question." See, the surgeon mentioned something about a brace. I just never got one. And in fact, when I had my stitches removed 3 days ago, they sent me on my merry way, like, yeah, just let us know if anything happens. So she promptly got me a brace and was fitted and all that good stuff. It was actually making some squeaky noise earlier. So just like the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz, that's about my
Gotta
like.
fix that thing up.
Yeah, I did. I was like, little drop there, and it was making all kinds of noise, man. It getting aging maybe not as graceful as some, but it still beats the alternative. So I understand that you're going through some trials and tribulations, building stoves
Yeah,
and whatnot.
it's been 2 days ago now. I got PRP
So
injections,
what's PRP?
platelet-rich plasma. It's
Ooh.
where they take your blood and then they spin it. And the scientific, doctor term is that they spin it real fast and get the good parts of the blood out, and then they put that in your body. And it's supposed to help with arthritis and pain and basically rehab your joints. But I got them in both shoulders this time,
Mm-hmm.
and they put me down all day Friday, and then yesterday on Saturday I was pretty worthless. This morning though, I got out trying to build some steps for the shed, and it's not too bad with Tylenol right now, but no, it was definitely, this is my third injection, but this one hit different. This
Mm.
this I don't know, it made me started feeling real sorry for myself for like real quick. Uh, Having to like, instead of lifting up my arm, it was like using this hand to lift up my arm to do something.
Yeah, you're giving yourself a spot. Well, today I was like having the girls help me empty the dishwasher. And I was like, yeah, I got this broke ass arm. Like, need some help. There's my range of motion is limited. And, I'm not trying to reinvigorate this. And I wonder how many people, either early 40s or late 30s, that haven't been in the military. Like, I wonder if they're experiencing the same sort of things, or is this like we just accelerated, our body's depreciation like by 20 years?
I don't know. That's a question I prefer to not even like go down because like it just becomes depressing. It feels like
Right.
I don't know. At the end of the day, like I'm hoping this gets some good. I went for a run this morning and it was pathetic, but it was still a run.
I went out.
Um,
I did 4 miles, little 4 miles. I'm still wearing what I was wearing out there, but just to get the blood moving, and I can't sit around and like be sedentary. Despite the
that's
way
the
I
problem.
appear,
Yeah, if you
despite the way I look, I don't like to do that.
yeah, like no, it's if you don't move, you'll die. Like it's You got to keep everything moving. Like I work out anymore. I don't even think it's to get in shape. It's just to like stay active.
Right.
Like the days of getting like in shape, like those days are gone.
Hmm.
I just want to like try to be active. And for me, working out is more mental than anything. It just makes me feel like got something accomplished first thing in the morning. And it's kind of like trying to build upon that every day, which helps keep me in a good place.
So I'll tell you this: I co-opted this from somebody else. So this is not a John Kreutzer original. I'm not that clever, but when I work out, I say the heaviest lift I do is lifting my ass up to go to the gym. Because once you get past that, once you're there, you're gonna do something, right? It's just the biggest part is starting it and getting it up. It's that's the heaviest lift. It's sometimes, like you said, a mental thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's for me like the hardest part of any workout because I don't work out that hard.
right.
The hardest part is getting out of a warm bed
Hmm.
and like going to work out. Like that's the hardest part. After that, like I mean, I'm only doing like 30-minute workouts anyway. So like it's not like I'm out there, trying to like set personal records or anything. It's just the hardest part is getting out of bed. But once I do that, then everything else, it's small victories.
But those are, I think we can start to transition. But those are healthy habits, and I think that we're gonna address some unhealthy habits. I think you and I know I have that we've both carried with us and have gotten away from. Uh, I know for if you know me, it's no surprise that for many years I was a habitual drinker. In fact, Brandon and I used to drink a lot together. We had some epic times, and it isn't until like much later in our lives, I think, that we were able to kind of see how detrimental that was. Habitual consumption, or even just the dangers of alcohol in general. And it's something like I never would have listened to as a 25-year-old. I wish I had. Um, but that's the topic today. Is we're going to talk about alcohol consumption and alcoholism. And Brandon's got a story that he wants to share. I know you shared this story with a lot of people behind closed doors, but this is like really the first time this is going to come into the public forum. Um,
Yeah, I'm the hardest part, I guess, I'm a pretty transparent person, so I don't have any problem like sharing, vulnerabilities or failures or, weaknesses and things like that. Um, but I'd rather share those things like with people that, it's a commonality or to help somebody out. What makes me reluctant to share, like, in an open forum is like, I don't want any pity or, the text messages of hope you're doing well, brother. I know those are well intentioned, but they make me feel like a broken, like I'm somebody that has to be treated with kid gloves. And I know they're well intentioned. I don't ever get mad about them. Um, I just don't like how they made me feel. I think when I read Mattis's book, Mattis talked a lot about post traumatic growth instead of post traumatic stress or post traumatic stress disorder. Um, it was just really about like, hey, like you can go through some terrible things and become better for it, right? Instead of it doesn't have to break you. Sometimes it can knock you down or whatever, bring you to your knees, but you can stand back up and move forward. So this is one of those topics that um I don't know. I think alcoholism. I always knew that it was something. It was just very common in the military. Binge drinking was common in the military. Still is. Um, every celebration, right? There's alcohol involved. Um, any kind of really shitty day, right? Or you come back from the field, you come back from a deployment, mourning, right? Like if you're mourning the loss of somebody, there's alcohol involved. Um, and I think it just snuck up on me because I don't know the day that I became an alcoholic. I just know it snuck up on me, and you know, And I'm somebody that, used to not like the taste of alcohol. And then over years, right before I quit drinking, I wouldn't be crazy for me to drink, 4 or 5 bottles of bourbon within a work week. Um, and because I think a lot of us do really well in the military, um, it's easy to cover it up. And I say that because you can you can be an alcoholic, but be a high performing alcoholic in the military,
Right.
right? The military, what I'm learning now is the military is more of a marathon. But if you want to treat it like a sprint, you can treat it like a sprint, right? You can go on a deployment and go hard and then come home and just drink your face off as long as you're showing up for PT, you're still working out and you're getting ready for doing workups again. You can go back on deployment and like you can treat the military like a lot of sprints. And I think that's what I used to do is it was just going 100% um, instead of playing like the long game. Now
Right.
I knew it was going to be a career, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I'm just going to go 100% everything that I do. Uh, and maybe it's my personality or it's a weakness of mine. But if I'm gonna drink, then I'm gonna put 100% into it as well, right? Like
No, yeah, that's play
I'm
hard.
gonna
What would they say?
be I'm
Like
gonna
work
be
hard,
really
party
good.
hard. Yeah.
Um, so all those things leading up, right? Where this came into it, and I'll just kind of
Well,
go ahead
before
and
we
put it out
start, can I
there.
ask you how long have you? Because you said you gave up drinking. How long ago was that? Just to put things in perspective.
August 9th of 2021.
Okay.
So
So we're
about
coming
a
up
year
on
and a
two
half
years.
ago, almost 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
congratulations.
yeah, dude, it was. I think it was one of the scariest things that I've ever done, and that sounds super like ridiculous. Um, but it was the only thing that I actually thought I would fail at. Everything else, I'm going to give everything I got to it because in every case, in my experience in the military, if I put 100% that I have into something, I don't fail.
Right.
And alcohol was one of those things that I was really terrified of because I was afraid I was going to fail. Um, so what I do, because I have to hold myself accountable, but I know that I can't. Um, and you may pick up on this because I've never told you about this, John, but you may pick up on this of how I am about certain things. Like if I have any doubts about myself being able to accomplish something, I tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
I tell everybody because they now become people that hold me accountable, whether they
Accountability
know it or not,
partners.
right? So going back to, and I'll pause right there to go back to like what brought me into um, the darkest day of my life, really. Like I was going through a custody battle to get custody of my children. At that time, both of my kids had said, well, we want to live with our mom. And at that time, I was doing the custody battle because I was like, you know what? They were not in a good place. I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. But I'm saying that there wasn't a lot of pressure because I was doing it because it was the right thing to do. There wasn't a whole lot of pressure on my shoulders. Now I was drinking my face off. Um, well, something happened, and my kids both tell me that, Dad, we really want to live with you. So, and this is the last, year and a half of therapy and counseling and, reflection that I've kind of learned like this was the trigger. Um, the moment that my kids told me that they want to come live with me, the pressure crushed me. And I say that because it became a no fail mission.
Right.
It went from I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, right? Kind of driving myself like this is the right thing to do. But when your kids tell you that, like, hey, like, I need you to make this happen, well, then it was a no fail mission. And I crumbled, like, absolutely. I'm already a bit of a perfectionist, but everything had to be perfect. And anybody out there that has juggled custody as a father, that's an uphill battle already, right? Going through the court system as a dad, like it is extremely challenging. It is completely uphill. There, I don't care what anyone says. There's no fairness. You have to be perfect, right? As a dad, you have to be a perfect father in order to have a court say, all right, the children should go live with their father. Well, I was working through this and I was becoming more and more absent as a dad and as a husband, as it turns out. And I remember my wife coming to me and saying, "Hey, like, what's going on? Right? Like, you're not here. You're physically here, but you're just not here. You're not present." And I would come home, and I remember, right, this was it's embarrassing and shameful, but like, I would come home. I know my wife is going to ask me how much I'm drinking that night, so I would come home 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I would drink as much as I can before she got home. That way, when she got home, she could see me drink, maybe one or two glasses of bourbon, um, and I could deal with, that kind of argument, right? But she wouldn't have seen me drink the previous 5 glasses,
Right.
right? So I just try to smash those as fast as possible, and then now I can deal with it. And because I'm a little intoxicated, I think I can deal with it better, right? Of course, that's a lie. But she asked me this question, and I remember telling her that like I don't know what's wrong with me right now. I just don't have any confidence, and that was really hard to explain. Still to this day, it's a little hard to explain. But I told her I was like, I don't have any confidence as a husband. I don't have any confidence as a dad. I don't have any confidence at work, and I don't know. I don't know where it went. I remember telling her that like my life is not or my life has been worse than what it is. I don't know why I'm feeling, pitiful, why I'm feeling sorry for myself, but I just don't have any confidence. Well, that thing started to like, you know, it started to exacerbate the problem because when you don't have confidence as a dad, it makes you dad less. It makes you get less involved. Well, the less you're involved, the less confidence you're going to have. So it just started to multiply upon itself. And I'll never forget my wife saying, all right, I'm going to go to Myrtle Beach with a friend. She went down to the Myrtle Beach with a friend. I didn't even argue about it. I was like, okay. Later on, she told me that she was just really wanting me to like, I won't say argue, but she wanted me to care that she was going to leave and go on a, weekend getaway with her friend. But I didn't. I was looking at it as like, dude, this is an entire weekend for me just to drink. Um, well, one night, I can't remember. I think would have been a Thursday night. Um, I drank a lot and really, really dark day. Like, and I say this again, like if there's someone out there that is in a similar situation, then I hope you'll listen. But I am not looking for any pity or, oh my gosh, hope you're doing okay, brother. Because I'm doing just fine right now. But that night, I got into a bad way, started feeling sorry for myself, worse than I ever have. And I knew the answer was like, I'm just going to take myself out of this equation, right? Like, I don't need to be here anymore. I'm a burden to everybody. If I go away, then like these problems will go away, right? Um, and fortunately, I sent a text message, right? I sent a text message to a friend of mine, two friends actually. One was in Japan and one was in North Carolina, about 3 hours away from me. The one in North Carolina, because we were in the same time zone, he called me immediately and was like, dude, you don't send text messages like that. Is everything okay? And I don't remember what I texted him, but we must have talked for a couple hours. I don't really know uh, because I was really drunk. And then my friend from Japan woke up in the morning, saw the message, called me also. I don't know exactly what I said or what was said to me. But if anything, right, it was a great delay tactic because they talked me to death that like I just fell asleep, right? I just went to bed. The next day, the friend from North Carolina called me and said, "Hey, man, I'm on my way. Let's go grab lunch together." Well, at this point, my wife was in Myrtle Beach, right, that Friday. We had lunch, me and my friend, we had lunch, and I was drinking. And I'll never forget, right? And this is something I would tell to every dad out there that if your kids want to come live with you, this has been the best. It just brought me back to reality. Is he told me that your kids want to live with you because of the dad you are, not the dad you're trying to be. And I remember, man, just feeling like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders of like, instead of trying to be this perfect dad, right? Uh, just be who you are because that's what's working, right? And at that point, it was a great visit, right? He went back home. I continued to drink Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. My wife got home, and I had drank almost 2 bottles of bourbon on Sunday.
On
And
Sunday.
on Sunday, like I had started drinking early that
We're talking
morning, and
500 milliliters.
yeah, 2 bottles, like
Okay.
two or 750 milliliters, so two
Oh,
fifths.
right.
Um, and I remember her coming home, and I was broken enough and vulnerable enough that I remember telling her that like I'm an alcoholic, and I was terrified of those words coming out of my mouth.
That is such a hard
It
admission to
is.
make.
It's like telling somebody you have PTSD, man.
Yeah.
It's like the moment you say those words, you're now treated with kid gloves. Like I'm afraid that if I say I'm an alcoholic, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, let's clear all the alcohol out. Let's make sure that we shut down all the liquor stores on the way, right? So we can't see them." And I don't want any of that, right? I'm already feeling at this point, I'm already feeling like a burden. The
Right.
last thing I want is people to readjust their lives for me, right? So I tell her that there was probably this much left in the bottle, that second bottle, like this much bourbon. And I remember her saying, "Do you want me to pour the rest of that down the sink?" And I said, "No." I said, "I want to never forget how crappy I feel right now." I said, and I mean, at that point, like my body was repelling the alcohol,
Oh yeah.
right? I was drinking, I was just drinking it straight, like chugging it and throwing up just to drink it again, right? Like my body was absolutely, saying no, like this is too much booze. But I told her, I was like, I don't want to ever forget how bad I feel right now. And she was like, okay. And I drank that. Um, Monday morning, I went to the doctor, right? Went to sick call, and that's when it's real. All right. Now I wouldn't say sober, but I'm not drunk. Um, and I went to sick call, asked to see somebody in private, and told the doctor that like, hey, like I don't know what's wrong with me. I just know something's wrong with me. Um, I don't know if it's anxiety. I don't know if it's depression. And then they get into this, man, of like, are you wanting to hurt yourself, right? And I'm not saying that like, big military and the way the system is set up, I'm not saying it's bad, but you have to know how to navigate that question, right? And everybody has to be an adult when you're navigating that question. What I had told the doctor was that I am not thinking of killing myself. I just wouldn't care if I died.
Right.
And I was just really fortunate that a doctor knew what that meant, right? Because in the military, like if you say, hey, I'm thinking about hurting myself, or maybe I'm thinking about death, man, they inform the commanding officer, right?
There
You
is
go
an
to the emergency
institutional
room,
response, and
right?
I have had to
There's,
take people to,
yeah,
yep,
like
it's like you
there's,
say the magic words, this is what happens, it unlocks the gate,
yeah,
and here you go.
and
Like,
it's one of those things where like, I'm not a child. Like I'm coming here voluntarily. I I think I have a pretty good handle on who I am and what's going on. But the doctor was like, well, what do you mean by that? Right? Unpack it. And I said, well, here's the thing. If I was to kill myself, I would become more of a burden on my family. I do not want to be a burden on my family. I said, however, if I was to get in a car accident and I was told I need to fight for my life, I don't think I would fight. I said, I just don't want to be a burden. And I feel like a burden, right? And I know that suicide would become a huge burden on my family and everybody that cared about me. So the doctor, fortunately, was like, I understand that. Like, I understand what you're trying to say, right? I don't think you're at risk of harming yourself, but let's get you into counseling, right? Like, and we worked out a plan. That was day one of sobriety. And I remember telling everybody, and I would tell everybody this today, right? Is that like, I was not sure. I would tell people that, like, I'm not sure that alcohol is my real problem. I just know it's not my solution.
Right.
Now, what I learned, right, is that it was a big part of my problem. And I'm not saying that, like, I'm not anti-alcohol, right? Like, people around me, they still drink and I have no issues, right? Like, I no issues being around people that drink alcohol. I just learned that, like, I'm not capable of drinking alcohol. Like, I love it. I absolutely love the taste of bourbon. I could drink it like water. I just know that I'm not capable of doing that like an adult. Um, like today, I'm sure I could have a glass of bourbon. And because I'm, stubborn enough, I'd be like, okay, no more than one. But I know 2 years from now, I would be drinking a bottle of bourbon a day again, right? Because when you drink, you look for every reason to drink when you're an alcoholic, right? Not when you're an adult, but like when you're an alcoholic, if it's a good day, you're going to drink.
You're gonna
If it's a
celebrate.
bad day,
Yep.
you're going to drink,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're me, right, you're going to work around the house and build stuff, you're going to drink,
You're being productive.
right?
Why not? Yeah,
If you're
sure.
going to barbecue, you're going to
Gotta
drink,
drink. Yep.
right? Like, you look for every reason to drink. And I don't think it's because people are bad, they become alcoholics. I think it's because, like, it delays, right? It delays having to feel stuff.
It delays having to
So
deal with it, to
yeah,
process
like
things.
I put myself in Alcoholics Anonymous and then Warriors Anonymous, which we'll talk about in just a second. But like, I put myself in those and I just learned so much about, like, alcohol keeps you from having to feel your feelings,
Yeah.
right? Like, you get to delay everything that you want to deal with. Now, the reason for me that it crushed me is because on a day that I wouldn't drink, now I'm having to deal with weeks, if not months, of things all at once. And that would be the worst day of my life because I'm not drinking and I've got to deal with, yep, I've been an absent husband. Like, and I'm feeling that right now in my relationship. I've been an absent father. Yep. And I'm feeling that right now in my relationship with my children. I'm dealing with, like, being lazy, right? Gaining weight and, like, bad health and not working out.
You don't
And you
want to work
start to
out because you're
feel,
tired, and you're tired because
yeah,
you
you
didn't
start to
sleep well.
feel all of those things at
Yep.
one time. And the only medicine that is like, okay, I'm just drink tomorrow, right? Well, I will say that by not drinking, and I don't want to make this about like, hey, guy, people shouldn't drink, but me, I shouldn't drink. Um, by not drinking, it gave me so much more time to, like we've talked about other topics, right? Like investing in real estate, by finding some different, streams of passive income, by intentionally spending time with my children, intentionally spending time with my wife, right? It gave me so much more clarity. Not to mention probably the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars that I save every month by not
Calories.
drinking. Yeah, right. Um, but like all those things, they were really helpful. And what I found, right, is that the more I talked about it in those smaller circles, I either found one, there were more resources that I was unaware of, or two, there were people that were going through similar things that I was going through. They just hadn't talked about it yet, right? So one of those resources was actually you, right? I talked to you, and at that time, I think you were like slowing down on drinking or whatever, just getting under control. But you were like, hey, man, my
Yeah.
buddy, he established a Warriors Anonymous. And for those who are unaware, it's like an Alcoholics Anonymous for military active duty veterans, first responders, right? Um, and it's more of a, for me anyway, in our local chapter, is more of like people that are your age, similar experiences, whereas AA can be a lot of guys that talk about, hey, maybe they're 70 years old and they've got 40 years of sobriety. And I think that's great, but it's just not relatable as much
Right.
as to me, who just got back from a deployment and struggling with kids. And, how do you pick up and, get your personal life in order when you just got done back from a deployment, right? So, Warriors Anonymous was a phenomenal resource that you provided to me. Um, and something I found, this will be like the last little bit here, um, that I'll share about this. One thing I found as I was talking to people, I don't know if there's, I have no expertise in this except practically, I guess. Um, I found there's a demographic, and I can only speak to the Marine Corps. There's a demographic. Every single person that told me that they are in a slump, right, is probably the better way to put it, right? Losing a little bit of confidence, getting tired, just kind of getting wore out. They were all between the 15 years and 18 years mark, right? Time in service. And they were in high op tempo jobs, right? Like we were. They were they were in, I won't say like the elite of the elite groups, but I'll say like they were in groups that like,
They were high
uh,
performers. If you're
yeah,
talking
high
about the folks,
performers,
the
man.
people
Like,
that are Warriors Anonymous, like
yeah, like
they were,
the
yeah,
occupational fields that they were in were like, there, you can't have a bad day, right? You gotta, every day, right? You gotta earn it. So what I've learned, and it's just my own assessment, is I think there's a certain demographic of military, and it's probably the same, right, in first responders. I just don't have an, I don't know enough, right, to be able to pull from it. But I think it's the analogy I've used. It's like a vehicle, right? That if you just run it 100 miles an hour, right, for 15 years and you forget to change the oil, something is going to break,
right,
right? And for me, what was breaking was my family. Work was doing just fine, right? And that was almost like my own justification of like, no, everything's good at work. I'm fine. I wasn't in trouble at work. Uh, Nobody really knew about, as much as I was drinking. But I would say that um, something breaks, right? And for me, it was I broke my family. Um, and by getting sober and like making myself really have to like deal with these, consequences that I created, I was able to start a little bit at a time, right? Start working away and chipping away at them. One thing that it really helped me, because I'm still somebody that I'm very capable of feeling sorry for myself, if I'm not careful and if I don't make myself become grateful. Um, One thing, I took a mixture. I don't know if I told you about this, John, but I took a mixture of like, I'd read the book, Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins,
mhm,
right? And I think he has a mirror or something of goals. Uh, it's been a while since I read the book, but it's like a mirror of goals, right? And he put his goals on the mirror so you could see them every day. I had just finished that book, and then I was in AA one night, and ironically, the topic was about being, having an attitude of gratitude, right? Which is
Yeah.
super easy to roll off the tongue, but it's much harder in practice. Well, one guy was sharing the fact that like he was arguing with his wife, and then he had to stop himself to be grateful that he still has a wife that he could argue with that day,
Hmm.
knowing that all the drinking that he had done, he could have very well not had a wife,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
She could have left him and had every righteous reason to do that. So I started thinking, and that night I went home and I made a gratitude mirror, right? And every day I wrote down on a post-it note, what am I grateful for, right? And naturally that mirror fills up over the course of weeks and months. And it helped me. Like there'd be days that I'm feeling sorry for myself and I just don't know how good I really have it. And if I go in there and I can see that, all right, these are all the things that I should be grateful for, right? And it sounds kind of cheesy, but it would bring me back into like, you know what, like I'm in a better place than I should be. So it really helped me out. And now almost 2 years after I quit drinking, um, life is better. Like I'm not immune, right, to like having a bad day. It's just now I've found healthier ways to cope with that. Um, Most of the time it's being more productive or intentionally, right? Like I'm going to go spend time with my kids. I'm going to go spend time with my wife. And I'm going to try to be present while I'm there, not just physically, but I'm going to mentally like
Hmm.
commit doing something with them. But yeah, I would say like that's in a nutshell, right? My story of, you know, personal story of like really alcoholism. And I think there's some resources out there, man. And like, we had talked about bringing our next guest on who has phenomenal personal story as well. And he's the one that started the local chapter for Warriors Anonymous. And I think there's a lot of resources out there. I would just tell anybody that if you do find yourself in a slump, um, you're not the only one,
No.
right? And sometimes you just got to grind, get on the other side of it. But
So one thing like we've talked about before, and I have the other side of the coin to this. Like you learn so much from. I'm not the one who coined the term, but standing upon the shoulders of giants, right? You can learn so much from hanging out with successful people and seeing what they did, and mirroring some of those habits, those behaviors, by standing on the shoulders of giants. But like someone can come talk to me or you, and instead of standing on the shoulders of giants, they can peer into the deep dark abyss that is some of my failures, and they can look at that instead of creating their own abyss, right? They can say, hey, here's the dark place, here's the bad place. You can see it. You don't have to create your own. You can just look at mine, and you can learn from that. And I think that like it's so powerful sharing those stories. Just, having the humility, to say the things you just said. I know people benefit from that highly, um, and that that can change a life, that can save a life, that sort of stuff. And you talked about the post-traumatic growth, and because of how I dealt with my PTSD, I delayed for geez, like a decade and a half at least, overcoming and processing certain things. So it wasn't until very recently, um, to where I gave up that habit, uh, of daily consumption, that I was able to actually deal with things, understand things. There's a time in my life where I was like, man, I just wish I could take a pill. It would make everything go away, like total
yep,
recall, like it's gone. And now I realize that I am so much more capable, so much better. I've learned so much because I had to, do those hard reps and go through processing things, understanding things. This was actually pretty interesting. So a couple of weeks ago, my oldest, she asked me, she goes, hey, can I see the stuff that you have from the war? I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, you have a box of stuff, like you said, like it's from the war. It's like just let's see, like patches, and I wouldn't say war trophies or statute of limitations, I'm sure, but whatever. But it's stuff collected over the years from deployments.
Right.
And I was able to open this up with her and talk about all these things, stone cold sober, without becoming overly emotional or without saying anything weird or awkward, and just
Right.
explain like, yeah, we did lose some friends out there. It's a very war is a bad, it's a rough thing. It's an ugly thing. I hope you never have to experience it, but able to talk through all these things that I would have been incapable of, a year ago. Or if I did try to talk through that, it would have been like super cringe, like
Yep.
pooping about Valhalla, crying about dead friends, type stuff. So
Which is how every conversation when you're drinking with the boys, every one of the man, those conversations they start out, like great, and they always end with like either somebody's getting into a fight
yeah,
or somebody, right,
yep,
is like drank too much and they're losing it. Um, and I'm not saying those things aren't like, sometimes like everybody has a different way of coping.
right,
But it just exacerbates emotions, right? Like it doesn't, if you're a happy person, it makes you happier, right? If
until it
you're a
doesn't.
sad person, it makes you sadder, right? It's just something that it's going to take whatever your current state is and it's going to exacerbate it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for me, I just learned, there's just so many things that I've done in the last year and a half that I would have never had the mental capacity or even I would have been just too lazy, I think, to like start those things up. Um, and now, I have a better relationship with my family. Um, I know at work, I've had Marines come up to me and talk to me about like share with me some very personal things that they're going through. And then they tell me like, no, you said the other day that you were talking about when you had spoke to your therapist. So that's why I felt comfortable to come and talk to you about it because I am really transparent at
No,
work of
yeah,
like, if when I was going to counseling, I'd tell everybody that, anyone in my team that like, hey guys, I'm going to be out for a little bit. I got to go to counseling. Like I just think, you know, I don't think we should, I'm not suggesting we should normalize being broken, but I think we should normalize working out, right? If that working out is physical, it's normal. But if we're going to work out like some things you got going on, in your head, I think that should be normal, right? Like the same way that you're going to try to get, your physical fitness up, I think it's the same thing of working to get your mental fitness up. Um, so I was really fortunate that I had a great, group of peers that helped me through it. I had great Marines that allowed me, right? So the younger Marines, like they allowed me to take care of my own things as well, right? So yeah, I would say, for me it was absolutely like post traumatic growth. Like it was really shitty spot, but at the end of the day, like things now much more clear to me, right? And I at least know now that when I hit another dark spot, um, I have some resources now available to me that I don't have to go, you know, destroy everything in my family and go pick up a bottle of bourbon, like because I know where that path is going to lead me.
right. I know in the Marine Corps, and I'm sure there's other services, officers have similar. We've got like the four horizontal themes, and we've got leadership traits and all these other things, but very rarely is it ever like imparted upon leaders, like show your vulnerabilities, explain those. In a lot of ways it's looked down upon, something you shouldn't do, especially as an
Mm.
officer. But if you can let your fellow Marines, the folks you lead, your peers, look into that and say like, this is just a man or a woman just like anybody else. um and that's going to hopefully enable them to seek self-improvement, self-betterment. If I say, oh, look at me, I'm perfect in every way, like, no man, like I'm a deeply flawed person, and if you can learn
Yep.
from my mistakes, good on you, because otherwise you're got to learn the hard way. And that's Yes.
I think everybody's dealing with adversity in their own way.
Yes.
Nobody like I think what I've learned is like nobody's got it made. There are no heroes. Nobody's perfect. Everybody's got their own, vices, and we're all just grinding, man. We're all just trying to like everybody's just trying to do the best they can with what they have.
That's right, man.
And once I started to realize that the standard I was reaching for was just unattainable, trying to be perfect and all these things, I couldn't. It was impossible. And now I'm much more comfortable with trying to live a more balanced life. Um, I have had people ask me, like, oh, do you think like if you were to focus more on your family, um, that you would be as successful, right? If I were to focus more on my family early on. And I think the textbook answer is telling people like, yes, absolutely. But I tell people all the time, like, no, I would not be, right? Like, I think that's a lie. I'd like to think I would have been as successful eventually in the military. I'll say because success is a loaded word.
That can mean a lot of
Um,
things.
exactly, it can. But I know that I chose the military over my family, and I was more successful in the military because of it. But if you were to ask, talking about that loaded word, like, okay, like how successful are you? Well, I was a complete failure as a dad and failure as a husband. Um, so, but what's good about the military is that when you get your performance, evaluations, nobody's grading you on how good of a father or mother or how good of a, husband or wife you are. Nobody asked that,
Nobody cares.
right? Yeah. So I think now, um, I had to take some things from work. I had to take some time and some mental resources that I was committing to work. I had to pull from that and reinvest them into arguably a better return on that investment
Right.
into my family. But yeah, when Marines ask me like, "Hey, would you be as successful?" Like, I'm not gonna lie, because I just don't think I think I would have been holistically more successful. But if you're looking at things through a very narrow scope of like military performance and military success, I don't think I would have been as successful. But I would have been better with that. I would have been much better of being more well-rounded successfully, than just like, okay, that's a really good Marine, and basically covering up with alcohol for me of just being an absent husband, an absent dad, right? That's the worst. I wouldn't, that's like, if there are any regrets that I have, they're not at all related to the military. They're related to like, you know, they're memories of me being a dad or me being a husband.
Mm. Man. It's powerful stuff, Brandon. And I know that's not like, I guess this is out there for the world.
Yeah, I don't like I
This
said, I
will
don't
never go
mind.
away, you know.
I don't mind.
It
I
takes a
don't mind
lot.
talking about some of those things, like with a small group and people that are have questions or kind of helping someone out. Um, this is definitely a first though to like putting this stuff, put this on YouTube. So we'll see how this goes.
All right. Well, yeah, I look forward to our next guest. I know that this will, if you've never been to AA meetings, you've never heard these conversations, there's some very powerful stories that come out of those. And hopefully you can change your life for the better. Yeah, thanks again, Brandon. I really appreciate everybody listening in, and stay tuned for our next episode. And happy late April Fool's Day, everyone. Joke's on you. It's April 2nd. All right. I guess
All
we'll
right, take care.
all right, that's Smoking Lamp Scholars signing off.